What's up, everybody? This is the New York Real Estate Investing Show. Greg Helbeck and Michael Pinter here. We're going to talk about a few different things on today's show. The first thing we're going to cover that is relevant to 2022. I'm sure, by the time you're listening to this, we're about a quarter way into the year. So a lot of stuff in New York State has changed over the last 2 years. And I want to cover some stuff that I've learned from experience. Michael has learned from experience. And this is just some kind of cutting edge information that I've learned from attorneys and just going out in the trenches doing deals. So the first thing that we're going to cover today is actually the new landlord laws that have gotten passed. And we're also going to cover today on the show what good cause eviction is and what you need to do as a landlord. Yeah. We're going to cover good cause eviction and also why rental properties can go bad and what to look out for when you're actually hiring a property manager, because a lot of people, they have this fantasy where they have no money and they get started wholesaling, which is a great business, a very difficult business, but it's a great business. And then they have some money. They say they get a couple $100,000 in the bank and they do a couple rehabs and then they're making more money. Now they're relatively wealthy, considering where they started. And then they say, I forget about this flipping thing. It's a hamster wheel, blah, 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 blah. And then they want to buy rental properties. And then they start buying rental properties and they're like, holy shit, this is a totally different business. So Michael has more experience than me with rentals. I'm starting to really go neck deep into this now. So I've learned a lot. So the first thing I want to cover is, Michael, we were actually just talking about the new laws really that have passed in New York over this happened in, I think, 2019. Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, passed a law. So I'm going to share the law.
Disgraced former governor.
He's so bad. Yeah. The Andrew Cuomo, the creep, if he's hearing this,
By the way, there is good cause eviction in a lot of your areas, right? Kingston, Newburgh, Hudson, Poughkeepsie.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
They want to expand it, and we're all praying.
I got a wholesale deal with a tenant inside that we haven't closed on yet. Been in contract for a year. 1 year we've been sitting in contract, and the guy can't get his tenants out. And I'm like, dude, I'm not closing until your tenants are out. So
where is it?
Newburgh. What do you think?
You can't evict. Good cause eviction is basically you can never evict.
Unless you're selling. If you're selling, you can evict.
That's going to be trouble too. You think it's going to be so easy? You're going to have to prove it. And how many landlords are going to say that they're about to sell, kick the guy out, and then not sell? Of course.
Well, that's a whole other topic. But so we're going to cover that in detail there today. Okay. But the first thing is that in 2019, basically the way that it used to be, and I'm borrowing this from my attorney, so I'm not that smart and I don't read the news every day. But what happened was the old laws with landlord tenant, and this is in New York State. This is not talking about New York City. New York City is a totally different playing field. So if you're going to learn how to do that, I would.
A lot of those laws apply in New York City. They completely wrecked a lot of the multifamily market in New York City.
But in New York City, it's more strict in New York City. I think New York State is different than the city.
Some of the state laws affected rent control, and rent stabilization, and it slaughtered a lot of guys who had rental apartments in the city.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys, generational, they've had these properties and they've just gotten.
Yes. Most of them are still doing okay, right? They were
rich.
Now they're worth $30 million. I don't feel so bad for them, but there are people who bought buildings, over the 5 years before that, thinking that they were going to be able to do things with the property, and then the laws came out and slapped everybody in the face. You want to talk about some of the changes? There were so many changes.
Yeah, I'll cover some, you cover some, and then between the two of us, probably will have all of them.
There were so many changes.
Yeah. So the first thing is that the way that you have to do a holdover eviction, and I'll explain that in a minute, got changed. So a holdover eviction is basically when you have a tenant who is on a month-to-month lease, or they are on a lease that has expired and now they're by de facto month-to-month. So there's no long-term lease in place. If you want to get a tenant out of a property back in the day, like before 2019, you needed to give that tenant a 30-day notice that their lease was going to be discontinued. And then they had to technically vacate in 30 days. And if they were not out in 30 days, then you'd be able to file a court case to go to court and do a legit eviction, which is, that's pretty straightforward. That is basically
makes perfect sense.
It's common sense. I mean, except for California, New York, and New Jersey and Connecticut, it's literally if you go anywhere else, it's the same shit. You can get someone out in Pennsylvania in fucking 10 minutes.
It's your property, and now you want to do something else with it. So give them reasonable notice, and then they should leave.
It's insane. I've had that happen to me as a tenant. My freaking they tried to double the rent on my old house. He gave me a 60-day notice, and I said okay, and I got a new place. It's not that complicated. Right. So it's this is part of life. So anyway, so they passed a law where that went away. And now what happened is if the tenant was there for less than, I think, a year, it was a 30-day notice. If they were there from 2 to 5 years, I believe it was a 60-day notice. And if they've been living in the property for more than 5 years, you have to give the tenant a 90-day notice. So that just, and I've done this
I
twice
think
now.
it might be 3 years. I think it was you live
3 years. Yeah, it's 3 years. Sorry, it is 3 years.
90 days.
So if they've been there for more than 3 years, or 3 years and a day, as they would say in the law, you have to give the tenant a 90-day notice that their lease, their month-to-month lease is going to expire. And during that 90 days, usually one of two things will happen. And so let me just unpack that first, because I'm kind of going too fast here.
But let me say one more thing. This is not just at the end of a lease. So you have to give, if they've been there for more than 3 years, you have to give them 90 days, even if you just bought the property, even if we were talking about having paid rent, but there's all kinds of reasons why you have to give 90-day notice, even if the lease is not about to expire, if they've been there for a long time. And if you buy, sometimes we buy properties, we don't know how long the tenant's been there. We buy properties in foreclosure, or the seller doesn't know. So you very often now, when I buy a property, I have to give 90-day notice, even if I'm not sure, because what you don't want is for the 90 days to expire, then you just go to court a month later and the guy goes, oh, you gave me 60-day notice, but you need 90-day notice, and you start the whole thing again. So a lot of people will be giving 90-day notice even when they don't need to, just to be safe, just to be sure. And then,
100%.
as you're going to say, most of them are going to stop paying rent. That's what happens.
100%. And then this is where it gets really bad. So I'm going to share a story that brings the point home. So I did this on a property where I bought the thing really cheap, and the tenants were not good friends with me, to say the least. And I didn't really know what I was doing either. I would have never done what I did. Like, I wasn't rude to them, but like I was like a ambitious first-time landlord, and I got a killer deal. And I knocked on a 70-year-old's door who's been living there for 20 years at age 25, being like, hey, I'm your landlord. Let's work out a deal. And they were like, get away.
Go away.
So yeah, so that didn't work out. But we gave them notice that they had to leave because they just would not pay more in rent. And the attorney that I hired actually gave me wrong information. He told me something that was blatantly just not correct. He said, when you give a 90-day notice, you shouldn't collect the rent. And I'm like, why would I give them notice to leave and then not collect the rent that I'm entitled to collect? So he actually got fired because he was doing this with some other people.
That was wrong.
So then my legal bill dropped in half, which was good, but I didn't collect rent for a while. And then after, we ended up working something out where we did an extension and I got much more rent, and they're leaving next month. So the point of that is, when the tenant sees that they're actually not going to be able to stay, you hit it right on the head. They're most likely not going to pay rent. And then that holdover case is going to turn into a non-payment case. And I'll let you take over the non-payment case process, because that is something.
Let me be honest with you. I usually do holdover litigation, even if they owe me money, because I have to listen. Ideally, you do a non-payment and you get a judgment for it, and you get a warrant for possession, which is what you give to the sheriff to get it out. But I've done this dozens of times, maybe more, where I got a judgment from the tenant. I've never ever collected a dollar. So sometimes it's easier to just do it as a holdover and just say, listen, I want you out of here. Sometimes you want to do it as a and you need a good attorney for this, as a non-payment, because you want to use that as leverage to get them out of there. You want to say, listen, I'm going to get a judgment against you for $20,000 because you haven't paid rent for a long time. I'm going to waive that whole thing. I'm going to make it disappear if you just get your ass out of there, quickly. So sometimes you want to use it as leverage. But I've done holdover proceedings for people that stopped paying me rent because the lease was up, let's say, or I just bought the property and I didn't want to get into the money thing. And I didn't want them to, I only wanted them out. I didn't want to get into the back and forth. So in Nassau County, where I've been to court a million times, anytime there's a eviction proceedings, you first go to mediation. And then if it's about money, it starts becoming about money. And people will say, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. They sign a stipulation for it. It generally can kick the can down the road a little bit. Like if a tenant is willing to sort of make any attempt to get current, you can't go back to the court and say, I don't want them. Like, people do that. They say, I don't want it. They say, we'll go to trial. But in the judge mind, it's like, you're not even trying here, and the judge is not going to look favorably upon you, and you could actually lose the case because the guy will make some claim, some stupidity that you didn't repair the toilet once. So you almost want, I almost want holdover cases because they're easier. And then my end goal is just to get them out. My end goal is almost never to collect.
So with the whole, I just want to confirm this with you real quick, because this is like really, really insightful. If your intent is to do a holdover and the objective of that is to get somebody outside the property, whether they're out of the property, whether they're paying or not, by de facto, even though we're not attorneys, they're going to get out. Like the judge can't say, oh, they have to stay because of X, Y, and Z. If you file as a holdover, whether they're paying or not, they're going to be able to legally get out because
they can go. But if it goes to trial, right, which doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does.
That's crazy. How the fuck can they go to trial? They're on a fucking lease. There's no
lease. It doesn't matter if even if a guy's not paying rent, even if the guy's not leased, he can still claim he has a right to a trial. And at trial, crazy things happen, right? The guy will make a claim that you shut the power off, and you're like, I didn't shut the power off, and he's like, well, somebody shut the power off. Meanwhile, it was like he shut the power off. Something like that. Or he'll take a picture of a leaky faucet and he'll say, I called you about it 7 months ago. You didn't do anything. And even if he doesn't have any proof of it, and a judge could say, okay, we're going to adjourn this for 6 months and you need to make the repairs. And if he doesn't let you in to make the repairs, then we'll kick him out. But if he does let you in to make the repairs, then we have to reevaluate. Judges say things like that. So if it goes to trial, and also just getting to trial takes time. So you want to, sometimes I want to focus on, so my attorney always asks me, he goes, what do you want here? And I say, I just want 99% of the time, I just want the guy out. He's like, okay, we're going to go for a non-payment proceeding because we're going to use that as leverage to get him out. Or he'll say it's a waste of time with the non-payment and we're just going to go for holdover. It really depends on what the exact situation is, right? So if you bought a property, and the guy, if you buy a property now, you not only have to give them notice, you have to exhibit the deed so that the guy knows that you actually bought the property. It's a whole thing. I had an eviction case where the guy actually appealed, which never happens. It costs a ton of money. He appealed because he said that the deed when we bought the property wasn't exhibited properly, and they lost. But it took 2 years to get the guy out but he spent a fortune in legal fees to appeal. So there's all kinds of legal crap about what has to be done, and you got to use a really good attorney who handles this stuff, not somebody who's going to tell you the wrong thing. But I will. In your bad attorney's defense, all the laws changed, right? Everything went upended right before the pandemic, and it changed things a lot. I mean, my attorney was literally, when it first happened, he's like, I don't even know what to tell you because I don't even know all the laws yet. I got to figure them out. So
you have to exhibit the deed when you do an eviction?
By the way, that might have changed too, because this was before the law changed. It may not be the law now. I may be wrong, but that was the thing. We had a situation from like 5 years ago where we bought a property at auction.
Oh, okay.
At auction, and then we immediately filed eviction against the tenants, and we didn't exhibit the deed. Maybe you don't need to exhibit the deed anymore. Maybe the laws changed. A lot of things changed, but I'm just saying you have to be careful. There's a lot of laws. A lot of laws are different, and if you're not using somebody who's really experienced and been doing this and is in court all the time, you can get easily screwed up. The number one mistake I see landlords making when they evict is that they try to serve the tenants themselves. Like they send their girlfriend or something stupid to serve them. And that's always a mistake. Because the number one reason why trials get thrown out, at least in my county, is improper service.
Same thing. It's the same thing.
And it's like $100-$200 to get a process server to do it, who will file an affidavit of service. Anytime there's a real affidavit of service from a process server, if the guy says, I don't see it, I don't know it, yo no say, whatever he says, the process server gets up there and says, I gave it to this guy, or I gave it to his wife, and that's it. The judge, it's over. Like that service point is out of it. So you want to spend the money on a process server to serve them. Sometimes you want to serve it even to give them, today you want to definitely give them the notice, and then you want to serve them when it's time to go to court. And people say, well, I'm going to spend $150 on it. The guy already owes me $9,000, paying $150. I'm just going to do it myself. You're not allowed to serve them yourself, number one. Can't be a party that's connected. And it shouldn't be like your friend or your cousin who doesn't know exactly what to do if they get up in court. Because your friend or your cousin when they get up in court can say something stupid, and then if the judge throws out service, you're back to square one. For a very relatively small amount of money, for $100, $150, $200, whatever it is, pay a process server to serve the guy so that when you go to court, that part of it is done.
Well, when you hire an attorney, they hire a process server. It's part of your legal bill.
It should, but you can't. Yeah. So listen, everything I buy now, I'm buying in an LLC. So in my county, and I think every county, if you're buying a property in an LLC,
have an attorney.
You have to be represented by an attorney. I used to buy properties in my own name, and I used to do them myself.
Okay.
By the way, I like doing them myself. I was more efficient than attorneys are, but I don't have that option now. So I use attorneys, and but a lot of guys are doing it themselves. They're going. It's called pro se. A landlord's doing it themselves, and they all have this stupid idea that they're going to serve the guy themselves, or my cousin, or my friend, or my girlfriend, or my wife, or my daughter, and it's just a mistake. So I see that done all the time.
Yeah, and this stuff. We're not trying to scare people from buying rental properties, but we're just trying to be honest about the reality of it. And even if you're buying occupied properties, it's the same thing. You need to know what's going on, because when you have the wrong expectations, especially trying to do an eviction because you're emotionally tied to that property because it's yours, it's not going to end well, and you're going to get frustrated. You're going to make bad decisions. So when you can hire an attorney, I'm telling you right now, people listening, if you just hire a damn attorney, do you use your closing attorney to do evictions, or do you use a different guy?
I have a different attorney only for
Do you use Charles as attorney?
Who?
Do you use that guy Charles recommended?
I did not use him. I don't use him.
No,
I was about to. I have a different guy.
Yeah, because he sounded like he knows what he's doing. That guy.
That's not. Yeah, if I ever need another attorney, I would call him. But
Yeah.
you got to understand that I probably have bought in the last year 8 or 9 properties only because the landlord got emotional about the property. Right. In almost all of these cases, not every, but almost all these cases, the landlord could have gone to the tenant and said, I'd like to give you $10,000 to get out of the house. Maybe could have done it. Maybe it would have been a negotiation. But the landlords, because they already feel like they got screwed over, cannot bring themselves to give the guy money. So I made this mistake a few times. I used to tell the landlord that I'm buying from, hey, I may give the guy money. It almost killed the deal once. They won't. So I never tell them that. But for me and for you, it's a business decision, right? So I had a deal recently where 2 squatters, they never paid rent. They were living in a property for 2 years.
Yours?
I paid, like what?
It was a property you closed on?
So I had a seller willing to sell it to me for X dollars. I thought I could sell it with occupied. I put it out to my list and I got crickets. Then I realized maybe I can get these people to go. I wasn't even in contract yet. And I offered each tenant, I think, $6,000. So $12,000. And then I put it out the list as delivered vacant, and it became a $60,000 wholesale deal. So for me, it's a business decision. If I have to spend 12 to make 60, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But for the landlord, they never would have given the guy, these people, for them, it was a principal thing. They never would have done it. So we're able to look at things more objectively and say, hey, if you got any kind of tenant problem you have is always a money problem, right? There is a number where everybody will leave, right? If they have $1 million, he'll leave, right? He'll leave and he'll go buy himself a mansion, right? You hope that problem is solvable for a much smaller number, but very often if I'm buying occupied, I might go to the tenant and say, listen, I'm contracted by the property. And my standard line is you really only have 2 choices. You think you have more choices, but you only have 2. Your choices are you can leave, a few months down the road when the sheriff pulls you out with nothing, or you can leave much sooner with a check in your hand from me. So, and then the next question is always how much? And then we start negotiating. So that's how I play it. But I can do that because I'm not emotionally tied to it. From landlords who've been lied to and
for years
and jerked around, and the people told them, oh, I'm going to buy the property. I'm just waiting to get a mortgage approval.
Oh, that's my favorite.
16 months.
You can't find a place to go. There's nowhere else to go.
Or they say, oh, I'm all packed up. Well, everything's in boxes. I once fell for that a long time.
That's such fucking garbage, dude.
Everything's in boxes. I'm like, this guy has to be leaving. 7 months later, the guy hadn't left. It's a tactic. So when that happens to you and you get offended and you get emotionally attached to it, the thought of giving this guy more money seems crazy, right? But if you and I coming into the situation, we're like, okay, if this guy wants X dollars, I'll give X dollars if I can still make money on the deal.
100%.
So, using a good attorney is crucial.
Here's another strategy that you just mentioned that I want to cover and then we're going to cover the good cause eviction. So what you just said is really smart because you look at it objectively. Here's another great strategy that will get you in court less with better results. When you fucking go at the tenant and they know that you're going to sue them for staying there, it's way easier to make a cash for keys deal. Way easier. Once they see them getting served and they see that you have an attorney and you're not, and you got to end communication with the tenant when you have an attorney, by the way. Like, don't even fucking bother.
Just speak to my attorney.
Yeah. So you get an attorney involved, you serve them, they see that they're obviously about to get screwed. When your attorney negotiates on your behalf a cash for keys deal, you have a way higher chance of getting that converted, because the tenant's not really going to believe you because they could really care less about you. But when they see that they're actually going to get kicked out, it's not going to happen every time, but you're going to have a way better chance of getting a real cash for keys deals put together through attorneys, which is relatively strong, and getting that person out. Because I've tried these like bullshit cash for keys deals where like there was no attorney, and like, they'd like look into the DocuSign and they never signed it, and then they just totally ghosted me. But then when you get a lawyer involved, they start to, usually the smart ones,
They definitely take you more seriously, for sure.
they take you more seriously. So you got to get an attorney. I mean, you'd be stupid, because if you do a 90-day holdover and you get thrown out of court and you get not adjourned, but if you get just like, it's like you lose on like a technicality or something, you're going to spend more money just doing the same thing, and you're going to lose rent for the entire 90 days. So you're going to piss away 6 months of rent.
It happened to me on a property I screwed up. I bought a property like last day of the month.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, that changed also. The law used to be you have to serve them before the end of the month for the next month. Now you can serve them anytime of the month. So that's good. So I closed on the last day of the month, and I immediately had them served like that day. And then after like 2 months of this stuff, they came back and they go, well, we're gonna challenge service because you closed late in the afternoon. There's no way we could have been served when you really owned it. And I said, I screwed up. So I had them served again. So I lost 2 months on it. And then in the end, I got them out and we made money in the deal. But like, those are things that it doesn't matter now, but you have to be careful. Like, I don't serve people the day you close, because it's a coin flip whether the judge is going to believe them. So serve them the next day, and then you own the property when you serve them. So things like that happen all the time. But without a doubt, when they get served from an attorney, very often to them, that is the come to Jesus moment where they realize, I got to make it. In general, 99% of people that are not paying rent know in the smart part of their head and the conscious part of their head, this is not going to last forever. But this huge subconscious part of the head says, just wait, just push it off, and I don't want to deal with it, right? I say things to that people all the time. I say, this day was going to come, right? And I just listen, and they usually don't answer, but then their brain starts working. Like, of course I haven't paid rent in 3 years. Like, I got lucky because of the moratorium, but like, yeah. And they go, so now it's either leave when the sheriff pulls you out. I said, and I always paint the picture, and I go, I'm going to be standing right there. The moving truck's going to be over there. 3 sheriffs with guns are going to come here. They're going to pull you out, and you're going to leave with nothing. I said, or you can leave sooner with a check from me. I try to paint that picture. And then very often, again, the next question is always how much. But that starts the negotiation. So anybody can steal my lines. I think they're good.
Yeah.
But that's the picture. But I've literally stood on the street on dozens and dozens of occasions while evictions happen. That sometimes they're sad. I mean, sometimes people are crying. It's not great, but
it's their problem. If they don't own the house, I don't feel bad for people who don't.
I evicted
a good person.
The guy once, and he was shocked. He was shocked. I'm like, I spoke to you 3 weeks ago. You told me that you would give me X dollars by 2 weeks ago, and you didn't. And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, you don't know. I certainly don't know. I mean, the guy was like 4 months behind on his rent. So people don't, it's not logical, but it happens with more people than you think.
When you get a warrant to evict, how often does the sheriff come versus they get out in time before the sheriff comes? Because that's like in the movie,
changed. I don't know if that changed specifically in my county or whether it's a state thing. The sheriff used to give a 72-hour notice, nail it to the door.
Oh, it's way longer than that, dude.
So now it's 5 days.
It's
more
than that. I think the judge can make them stay for like 30 days sometimes. Depends on the case.
But what I'm saying is that's after the warrant for possession is given to the sheriff.
Oh,
and the sheriff gets it through their calendar. The sheriff has to give notice that they're coming. I would say a majority of the time, they leave when they get that notice, but not all the time. So now it's 5 days. But that when they see that, that's if the come to Jesus moment was not when they started the process, and the come to Jesus moment is not when the judge says you got to get out. When the sheriff comes, that's really when they get serious. But people still stay.
Does the sheriff actually pull them out of the property?
I mean,
the sheriff will remove them with force.
They knock on a door, and I feel bad for these Nassau County sheriffs because they only deal with like misery. Like I speak to them all the time. They're like, everything we deal with is like pissed off people. We're evicting people. We're taking people's guns because they got a order of protection. It's like everything we deal with is bad.
Yeah.
And they're nice. And if the guy doesn't open the door, they'll break the door down. But people like open the door a crack and see it, and then go and the guy's like, "You got to get out." I mean, they don't pull them out. They never really pull them out, right? And there's 20 guys from the moving company waiting there, right, with 3 empty trucks. I mean, that's how it works in my county. And there's like a whole crowd, and they go, "You got to get out. You take whatever you need, but everything else stays." And yeah. So I paint the picture that the sheriff pulls them out, but I've never had the sheriff have to pull them out.
Yeah. They're usually gonna leave. Like once they know they're getting out, like they're you're gonna see like the pod in the front lawn, and then you're gonna see
no pod. These guys are just they just take their stuff and go.
You don't see pods?
No, because they're not entitled to the pod. The pod's on my territory.
No, but the tenant gets the pod to then ship out. You know, I had this happen in California. This guy had a pod there for like 3 months, and he
never happened to me. Most of these guys have, they'll get a shopping cart from the local supermarket.
Joe Finneran had a tenant literally take all their stuff out in the shopping cart. Literally, the shopping cart. She got kicked out, and like she was pushing a shopping cart down the street, and there was like a drug bust in there.
I've seen that happen.
It's crazy.
There is a train of thought that even if the sheriff gives notice, that you should still go through with the eviction. And I understand it, but I don't do it because it's expensive. And I've had a situation where I had the sheriff, the person vacated, right? They vacated, they shut all the utilities off, right? After they got 72-hour notice. So I came in and I see they're gone. I tell the sheriff, you don't have to come, they're out. And I go in there and they left stuff, but crap. So I brought in a cleaning crew, threw all the stuff out. Then, of course, they come back. They go, "Oh, you threw out my laptops. You threw out my stuff." I'm like, "You left the property. You knew you were being evicted, and you shut the power off. That means to me you're not coming back. I mean, you wouldn't return my calls." So they didn't have a case, but they thought they could sue me. But it's a cleaner situation when the sheriff comes and evicts, because in theory, a guy could leave and then he could show up again, like break in, change the locks, and say, "I don't know what you're talking about," and the sheriff never came. So I understand that you got to be careful about that. I've never had that happen to me, but I know there are guys that'll go through with the eviction anyway, just so that the sheriff puts up a sign. Because if the sheriff puts up a sign, they evicted, and then you come back, the sheriff will come back and kick him out. So I understand that thought, but for me, if a guy leaves, then I'm usually just changing the locks and
then you're out of there. What county is harder to do an eviction in, Nassau or Suffolk?
Well, Suffolk, it's a lot of different places. It's like different
like towns and villages and all that shit.
And it's something each one. So you're dealing with different people. In Nassau, it's one court for the whole county except for the city of Long Beach and the city of Glen Cove. So it's more consolidated. It's a little easier. It's one judge, so you know who the judge is. It's easier. It's different judges.
Judge tenant friendly or landlord friendly?
The one right now is pretty landlord friendly, so he's good. But then they rotate them. There was one guy there for like 30 years who was good. He was pretty good. And then eventually they mandatorily retired him. And then they were on like a rotation, and some guy showed up from the 5 boroughs, and that was a disaster.
Oh yeah, you're not gonna.
In general, the adjournments in Nassau are like a couple of weeks, which makes sense. Somebody needs more time to get a couple of weeks. In the city, when you get adjournment, it's like 3 months. So this judge got up there and he's like, "We'll adjourn for 3 months." And everybody's like, "Whoa!" And somebody whispers in his ear, like, "That's not how things get done here." And he figured it out. But the guy right now is pretty good. He's fair. He's good. And I'm good. My attorney's in front of him right now. I don't know what happened today.
Why, you're doing an eviction?
I mean,
you're doing it as eviction as we're doing the eviction podcast.
Yeah, I have a hearing today. I mean, I know March 16th was the day for one lovely tenant. So
these attorneys, I don't get how they do it. So as we wrap the show up, I want to cover good cause eviction because that's actually relevant. We'll end the show with that. So Michael, what is good cause eviction? And then we'll chop it up and kind of break down what you need to know about doing deals. With that being said.
Sure. So good cause eviction is a law that we said applies in a few cities in upstate New York. And they want to make it the law of the whole state. What it does, in essence, is it puts the onus of eviction more onto the landlord and really does not allow the landlord to do things that he wants to do with his place. Now, if you own a property, you would think as a landlord, if you want to keep it vacant, you can, right? If I have a tenant, his lease is up, maybe I want to move in, all these things make sense. But with the good cause eviction, you can't evict. First of all, you can't raise rents more than 3% a year, even if they're ridiculously below. Even without rent control, rent stabilization, just any place, you can't raise rents, and you can't kick a tenant out unless there's a really good cause. And it's really on the landlord to prove why they want somebody evicted. And that's not a good place for a landlord to be, right? We should be able to evict anybody from our properties, in my opinion, for no reason. Right? Why do I have to prove why? Maybe I want. What if I want to use the place as a studio? Maybe I want my kids to move it. Whatever it is, I want to be able to control my properties. And good cause eviction basically says that someone has the right to live there forever,
in perpetuity,
unless you have a real good reason.
So yeah, if that actually happens, I'm gonna either sell all my shit or just not buy rentals in New York anymore, just as a simple business decision, because it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I'll just go to Pennsylvania or New Jersey or whatever, but it just doesn't. So we'll talk about how you have to handle that because it's new now. But the thing with that just makes no sense is that I don't understand the whole goal of why they would do that, because they're just going to make it there's going to be a big disincentive to even operate rental properties in the state, which is ultimately going to, like, I think a lot of these crazy policies, they think they're like all on the cutting edge, but really what happens is they end up just shooting themselves in the foot, because they're going to bring in shittier quality people. No one's going to want to manage them. The people are going to let them go to foreclosure. And you're going to drive all the people who have a lot of money out of the state from a landlord's perspective, and you're going to fuck everyone up. So I don't think it makes actual sense. It's
going to have the opposite effect, because the fact that you can't raise rents means that I better raise my rents before you come in. In other words,
so the rent's going to be crazy.
I'm going to jack up all my rents for anybody new moving in, because I don't have the ability to raise rents later if the market moves. And it's going to really prevent landlords from being able to take care of properties, because it's not going to be worth it if I have 12 tenants who just won't leave, even in places that I want to fix up. So one of the big things that changed a couple of years ago was that they didn't allow rent stabilized apartments to have rent. The way the law used to be is that if I fixed something in the apartment, if I made an improvement, I could take like 1/50th of that and raise the rent to it. So if I put a new kitchen for $50,000, I can raise your rent by $1,000 in theory. They changed that. So if you have a rent stabilized or rent controlled a building, you almost have no way to raise the rents now. It's really bad. That's why a lot of the values of rent stabilized or rent controlled apartments dropped significantly. And something like this it's a typical government law that feels good, like, oh, we're protecting poor widows and orphans that were going to get thrown out by some greedy asshole landlord. But really, it's going to screw those. It's going to hurt those people, because the landlords are not stupid. And if a landlord has 50 units and he can't evict 10 people, and maybe they're not paying rent, but it didn't fall under some prospect of the good cause eviction, or maybe it takes them 8 months longer to evict people, that guy's not going to take care of his other 40 tenants the way he used to.
No,
this is just
like shit.
It feels good, but it doesn't actually do any good. And that's really what's going to happen. I mean, the truth is, if people can't afford to live somewhere, then they should move somewhere that's less expensive. I mean, that sounds cruel, but that's the truth.
It's reality.
We're in a market. We're in a market-based system, and if these greedy landlords are not going to raise rents to the point where people can't pay them, because then they won't have properties, right? These same crazy greedy landlords were giving people huge discounts during the pandemic because they were afraid everyone was going to leave. So the market usually takes care of these things, and government usually screws it up in general.
I agree. And the thing with this that's scary is because so the cities that this is in effect now is Kingston, which is a city, Newburgh, which is a city, but also has a town. It's only relevant in the city. Poughkeepsie, which is a city, but also has a town. And then Hudson, which I don't even know where that is. That's really far upstate. That's like in between.
Somebody came to my RIA last night from Hudson.
Who, Evan?
Kevin.
Did he have long hair?
No, he was very tall.
No. That's like 2.5 hours from like me.
I'm like, I can't believe it. He said to me, you're the only guy who seems to be teaching this in New York.
Dude, you have a cult following, dude.
Hudson is near Albany. I'm like,
I know, it's far.
The Schwarms. He's like, yeah, I'm not fans though.
Wow. That's a journey of a.
I could not believe it. He thanked me today. I'm like, I can't believe you came from so far. He's like, the
Yeah,
best
thank
five.
you for driving 3 hours.
$5 admission. He goes, the best $5 I ever spent.
Oh,
It was like a $5 admission and $80 for gas.
yeah, right. Especially now with the way this country is looking with the give. That's another podcast. But yeah, the good cause. I mean, I'll tell you what. I'll say this on the record. If that actually passes, I will probably keep the stuff I have, and then anything new, if that is a real law, there's no way I'm getting involved in rental properties. That's worse than California. California is a freak show out here. Don't get me wrong, but there's none of that bullshit in California. None of that. And they probably won't ever pass that because it's such a big state. But
we should get rentals in Texas. That's a state where they are pro landlord.
The thing is with Texas is like, there's definitely problems in Texas, but it's such a I've done business there, so like it's so fucking easy to do shit down there. It's so easy.
What's the problem?
No, but it's like it doesn't. To me, I'm like, why is this so easy? I'm used to shit being so complicated. I'm like, wait a minute, you get a title back. It doesn't really make sense because I'm used to all these bullshit hard areas. So like when you get something in Texas, you're like, this is too good to be true. It seems like a scam, So, but the thing is with good cause eviction, I mean, I really think that it probably will get passed. I hate to say it, but what will happen is it'll probably really screw things up for like 5 years, and then they'll probably reverse it because
listen, we have to.
There's no way you can't. No one's going to have any incentive to do any business. Like it's going to affect property management companies. It's going to affect. It's just going to screw the value of buildings up. No one's going to want it. It's going to fuck everything up, and then
it's going to be really bad.
Yeah, I don't think it would. I mean, I think it will pass, but I don't know if it'll stay there because it's just. Yeah, especially too because where New York is, there's so many states next to New York where you can work in. It's not like you're pigeonholed. Like if you're in Long Island, you can go to Connecticut. If you're in Long Island, you can go to Jersey. If you're in where I'm from, you can go to Pennsylvania or New Jersey or Connecticut. Like it's not like we're like in Alaska where like we have to literally remotely invest, through Canada. Like we're in an area where you can, especially now with technology, you can buy properties anywhere. Like I buy properties in New York. I don't even live there. So like it's just. It doesn't make it's not going to be pretty. I think you got to definitely keep your eyes and ears tuned to the news. I would definitely Google this stuff and read
By
like
the way,
the real deal.
Just got an email from my attorney. I appeared in court today. The matter was adjourned to April 27th. Tenant didn't appear. If she's not at the next appearance, we get a default judgment. Let's hope she doesn't show up.
That's good. What happened there? Was it a non-paying tenant or was it someone who you just had to get out because they weren't paying enough?
Well, it's a combination. It's a long story.
So. But with that question, actually, I'm glad you said that on the podcast. Now, this tenant doesn't show up today. The thing gets adjourned. So technically, like could be strategic on the tenant's point. If they show up again,
you get one free adjournment. If she shows up,
show up again, what happens though? If
the second time party doesn't show up, it's default judgment. So we'll get.
But if she shows up, then and she shows up to the next appointment, can she use another one because she's there now, or
she'd have to make a good case to get another adjournment? Like she'd have to say no speaking English, or I need an attorney. Like then she'll get one more adjournment for another like week or two, and then then if she doesn't appear or she does appear, then it's good that she doesn't show up. I hope they never show up. It's better. It's easier. I'd rather get a default judgment.
Craziness. Well, how much did that attorney cost you for that appearance?
I don't know. I'm writing him lots of checks now because I'm doing lots of evictions, so I don't know.
Yeah,
so,
interesting. Well,
doesn't always narrow. He doesn't always give me itemized by case. I have like a lot of them going on. So
does he bill you hourly?
I give him some money up front, and then if it's more, we get more.
Yeah, that's what I do. You pay him it's like a credit card basically. It's like a gift card. I'm going to start giving you gift cards for your birthday. Hey, here's an eviction gift card. It's powered by John Ravella. I can buy you.
Does Ravella do your evictions?
No. He just does closings. He's probably great at them, but I want to have my attorneys spread out. I don't want to have all my eggs in one basket. It just doesn't. I don't like doing that. I actually found my eviction attorney through a webinar. I did a webinar on how to get tenants out, and I watched it and I thought it was really good. They pull a Frank Kern, goodwill before you ever make an offer. And then I called them and I'm like, hey,
where's he located?
Walden.
All right, good.
I would use a Long Island attorney, but I don't know if it would make sense for them to drive upstate.
Doesn't make sense. They have to appear. They have to appear.
Yeah, then it doesn't make sense because if they didn't have to appear, then they're probably a little more sharky down in Long Island because people are kind of pussies upstate a little bit. But anyway, so I hope everyone got some value from that. If you want to buy rental properties, you got to go in with your eyes open. You need to know the law.
We're talking about property management. You want to talk a little bit about property management before we go?
Oh, yes. So Michael, you were good, man.
You finally have signed up with property management, but I just wanted to share this. I shared this with you before. I want to share it with everybody.
Yes.
And I never realized this. I always thought property management companies get all their money from the percentage of a collected rent. So that usually varies between 7 to 10% in most cases. But what I found out from someone who recently sold a property management company is that that's only, for a lot of the property management companies, it's only 1/3 of their revenue. And the other 2 parts of the revenue are coming from things that are really not aligned with your interest as a landlord. He said that 1/3 of his revenue was coming from markups on repairs. So that means that they want to do repairs because they're making money off it. And you as a landlord do not want to do repairs unless they're absolutely necessary. And the third thing he said they're making money from it was lease ups, which means when a tenant leaves and a new tenant comes in, they were getting a flat fee, which was more than their actual cost to do the work. And that's also something you don't want as a landlord. You want tenants to stay as long as possible. So just always ask questions when you're talking to a management company about those things, because if they're incentivized to make repairs or incentivized to get a tenant to leave, then your interests are not aligned. So be very concerned about that.
Interesting. Now, with that being said, would you only hire a property manager who owns properties themselves, or you don't really care about that?
I don't care about that so much. I really want to be clear on the things that I just said, right? I want to know that I'm completely aligned. Like, I'll pay more of a percentage if I have to. If the guy says, well, I'm not going to make any money, like, I'll pay more, but I don't want to pay any markup for repairs to charge me what it costs you. Because then I know you're only going to make repairs when you have to, right? It's very easy to make repairs. Tenants are going to ask for things all the time. You want your property manager to be somewhat reluctant to go out there and do something unless it's necessary. And I want tenants to stay as long as possible, right? I want to pay bonuses as a landlord when a tenant renews, right? I want to pay bonuses, maybe especially if there's a rent increase. Like, I'll pay a portion of that to the property manager. I don't want my manager incentivized to get people out of there, right? That's the last thing.
In New York, that's what we just talked about.
Exactly.
You're still paying the property management fee when you got the fucking eviction going on. Last time I checked.
Exactly.
I just got to the point where 90% of my stress was coming from 10% of the bullshit with the rentals. So I said, I had a new one I'm closing on. Like, this one is a good one too, because it's an all cash deal. There's no financing involved. So it's just a straight up, I don't have to worry about like paying a mortgage or anything. And I'm like, you know what? This is the one I'm going to hire the manager on, because I'm going to start with this manager, and then the other ones I'm going to get other managers on, and the other ones I have. But long-term wise, if I can find a good one who can make my life easier, I will be more than happy to pay 10%, assuming our interests are aligned. Like, I follow the things you mentioned. So another thing with property management, actually, now that you opened up the can of worms, this is something that I've realized is like, people think that like, and I don't have a property manager active. I just literally talked to one today. We're going to move forward on, but I've heard this. People think that just because you hire a property manager means you're passive, right? Which is total bullshit, because when the property manager is going to, make some sort of substantial repair, they're either going to notify you or they're going to bill you, right? So you're not like totally out of the weeds. The thing I like about the property manager in theory is that there's a layer of protect. There's like a sandwich, like there's 2 pieces of bread and you're the top piece of the bread, the property manager's in the middle. So you're not like emotionally getting like roped in, like, oh, the toilet's broken. You're like automatically pissed because they just told you you're pissed. But if like the property manager calls you like the next business day, hey, toilet backed up, we got a new one in there. It was $200. Like it's a little more logical. You can be a little bit more just high level, because when you get a tenant that bothers you and every time they call you, you want to throw your phone off the George Washington, they could even call you telling you they bought you a lottery ticket. You don't want to answer the phone because you're conditioned to like get pissed off when they call you. So 100%. It seems to add up. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's not going to make it passive, but it'll make it a little bit.
Listen, I self-manage my own properties, and I know there are tenants that annoy me for sure. You have to learn how to do that. I understand from your perspective, because if 90% of your stress in anything in life is coming from one place that you can eliminate for a relatively
Small fee.
amount of money, you should do it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, I don't stress about it anymore. I had tenants that gave me stress, but I understand completely what you're doing. For me, it's not that bad, right? I have a tenant who I just remembered is driving me bananas about something that I can't figure out. But you, yeah, if you can eliminate it for a relatively small amount of money, that's not going to kill the deal and kill you financially. Then of course you should do it. Listen, I know people that self-manage who are terrible, right? They're just horrible, right? I know guys that on one end just go and fix everything and spend way too much money and screw up their cash flow. And I know guys who never do anything and piss off the tenants. There's a happy medium in between where things that need to get done are getting done and things that are not needed don't get done. But
Yeah.
but if you're and your stuff's in different places also, so yeah,
It's not central. They're all over the place. Yeah.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah. Interesting. How often do you get a call from a tenant or a text?
Every 2 weeks, maybe.
And is it something, do you respond right away or do you tell them that unless it's something urgent?
I usually respond right away, but it doesn't mean I'm actually going to, deal with it right away. Sometimes it's something that really could wait. I get texts sometimes over the weekends or late at night, and I'm like, it's nothing I can do until tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. It's a balancing act. And it's something that you gotta, as you're listening to the show and you want to buy rentals, you gotta know what to expect, especially if you're going to do it in this state, because you gotta know the laws, you gotta know how property managers work, and you gotta know this good cause eviction thing could be reality coming up soon. So the more you can stay on top of it, the better. So I appreciate everyone listening today, and then hopefully they got some entertainment and some information, and we will see everybody on the next episode. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Thank you.